What's up, everybody? Welcome back to your favorite New York Jets subscription podcast, Badlands. I'm your host, Joe Caporoso. A Sunday bi-week 12-pack. Going to give some thoughts on the week that was of Joe Douglas getting fired and all of the other chatter that has came out of that. It's been another hell of a week in Jetsland where there is an insane amount of news not related to winning football games. That's kind of been par for the course this year. The amount of stuff that has happened this season is unprecedented, almost as unprecedented as the disappointment. I was saying on Twitter that there's been more emergency podcast events than wins so far this year, as the Jets currently sit at 3-8, and we've had in season the Devontae Adams trade, the Robert Saleh firing, the Joe Douglas firing, the Son Reddick ending his holdout. I am sure Rodgers going to the bench at some point post-bye week will probably be the next thing, but let's see. Before I get into some thoughts on the Jets' overall situation right now and their decision to fire Joe Douglas in season, have to remind you guys, the 12-pack brought to you by Magic Mind, which I have been ripping through with my morning coffee every day, all throughout this entire season. It's became a key part of my daily routine. I love it. A mental performance shot that is 100% safe, is not a coffee replacement, has time-release caffeine, validated by doctors with over 200 scientific studies behind it, using the highest possible grade matcha. It tastes good, a little nano encapsulation technology, which sounds so smart, you know it's good for you. And every time you buy, they donate 5 cents for each bottle to mental health charities that help U.S. homeless communities, and it is 100% carbon neutral. We still have our offer going where if you use code BADLANDS20, you get 20% off a one-time purchase. I will link that code in the episode description. That is code BADLANDS20 to use at checkout for Magic Mind. Give it a shot. I promise it will become a part of your morning routine. Certainly works for me. So, Joe Douglas, I don't think we've been shy about expressing our feelings here. And I don't think there's much of a debate left to have at this point, right? Like, they made a decision. It was clear for a while now, at least for a month or so, that he was not going to be back next year, right? He was in the last year of his contract. He fulfilled all 6 years of the deal. They left him as a lame duck when it looked like this season was going off the rails. I think both sides had the mutual understanding that this was over, and Douglas was in full lame duck mode. Jets front office is in full shell company mode, being run by holdover guys who are just kind of like still knocking around. I mean, Phil Savage will temporarily do the job, but it was time. You know, he gave him 94 games, and we're going to do the bigger conversation about him in the offseason. I've been not surprised by sort of the distant outcry of like, how could they do this? And he was such a good drafter because, you know, the Garrett and Sauce rookie of the years. Of course, there's more nuance to him than that. He's been a very uneven drafter and, more importantly, just struggled with team building and struggled with building and hiring the right coaches, which was part of his job and his remit, which people forget. This was not the reporting structure that the Jets have had previously where both people rolled directly into the owner. Douglas hired Robert Saleh. He was across the staffing decisions that were made. And I know, I read Zach's article, I listened to his podcast. I know Woody and ownership meddles and the business side of the Jets business meddles. That's not new news. That's been the case kind of forever with the Jets. And I'm not saying that Douglas had an easy task and like Woody Johnson made his job any easier. It's a challenging situation, but Douglas just was not good enough in a vacuum and was given a long rope and was given a lot more grace by fans just because he's a little less present and a little more media savvy than Robert Saleh and was better than Mike Maccagnan and John Idzik by small amounts. And I kind of had to look, right? It came from the Ravens and the Eagles, this big ball guy, football guy, you know, following Maccagnan with his glasses like I'm wearing now. And sort of like just a different feel and energy to it. And I think that stuff kind of plays into it sometimes. And, you know, when the Jets got Douglas, he was a highly sought after candidate. If everyone goes, who's going to come here? No one's ever going to come work here. Everyone said the same thing after Idzik and Maccagnan. People were excited when they got Maccagnan. He was considered a good get at the time. People were excited when they got Douglas. He was considered a good get at the time. Same with Saleh. They just didn't work. And this part of this regime ended when Aaron Rodgers got hurt against the Bills. That was a Hail Mary extension that they got for missing on Zach Wilson. And that Hail Mary really fell incomplete once he got hurt. They gave everyone this sort of pass year, which is kind of crazy in retrospect. And that's how you get to a situation where Joe Douglas had 94 games and was 30-64. So I do think moving off him now doesn't hurt in terms of getting ahead of the search. I know there's certain limitations officially to what the Jets can do, but it's that much more out there now that they're getting a new guy. There's going to be back channeling conversations. These things always happen. They could also, if they're not going to directly hire the GM and they are seriously going to consider a broader VP of football operations or a different kind of role to bring into the organization to create more of a buffer between business and football, they could work on that process now. And it makes sense from a standpoint that if Woody believes he's going overseas and his life is about to change because he's going to become an ambassador, day-to-day is his primary job instead of running the Jets and whatever else he's doing in his day-to-day, he probably wants to get ahead of arranging his affairs before the middle of January, and that kind of makes sense. So still in the moment, surprising. The Jets just love doing these things on like Tuesdays at 10 a.m. and keeping us on our toes. I hope, like many hope, and like we've been talking about endlessly, that they just really do the full scope of the reset. And that is going to include moving on from Aaron Rodgers. And I know you could make a reasonable on-field case to keep him. Like, I'm not saying you can't, because what are your other options? And we're not really clear what the other options are yet. We don't know where they're going to pick. We don't know what the rest of the market could end up looking like. It just feels over. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes when it just feels over, it ends up being over. Like, it felt over with Mike Williams after the Bills game. And he stuck around for a couple weeks, but we all kind of knew in the back of our heads like he was probably done here. And then he ends up being done. And kind of the same deal with Saleh, the same deal with Douglas. It's just hard to picture after this year Rodgers coming back. It's hard to picture him playing every game the rest of the year. And I could be wrong. He might want to prove a point and play all 17. I was just like thinking like December 29th, the 3-12 Jets going to play the 11-4 Bills or whatever they're going to be. It's like negative 10 degrees. Like, do you really picture like Rodgers in that game? Maybe I could be wrong. Maybe he's going to play next year. It feels as of right now, as of me recording this, that they're going to have to go a different path at quarterback next year. And there's not a lot of great answers, right? If they're picking high enough, I think Cam Ward's a name we're excited about. They might not be picking high enough. If they're going with a different bridge quarterback, they'll probably start with trying Tyrod. And if Tyrod could stay healthy, a huge if, he's a perfect bridge quarterback. Better than even Josh McCown was back in 2017, the ultimate bridge quarterback, although it was a bridge to nowhere, unfortunately. And you look around the usual cast of characters, what other veterans, could be around. I don't want to be talking about Gardner Minshew again, but that's kind of like the level of quarterback that, you're looking at. Do you take a spin on a guy like Justin Fields if he shakes free? I don't think Darnold's coming back here. Sometimes names end up becoming available that you don't expect is what I would say. But for right now, we don't have to figure that out. I think you want to bring the new regime in. I think that's obviously going to help determine what happens to the quarterback position. But you never know with Rodgers, man. Rodgers could just turn around one day, like in late December, and be like, I think I'm done with football. Or maybe I want to go somewhere else. Or I don't know. It's hard to predict with him when the season is this much off the rails. And the Jets, in the vacuum of this year, are such like a zombie team. Right? There's just like no one left in Florham Park, and they're all just kind of like lumbering through to try to get to the end of the year. And I hope that isn't the case. Like, I don't actively root for them to lose. I won't mind if they lose. Like, I'd like to see Breece Hall play well. I'd like to see Garrett Wilson play well. I'd like to see Sauce play better. I'd like to see Will McDonald play well. Quinnen, Sherwood, Michael Carter. There's plenty of guys who I think are going to be here next year, and I don't particularly want to go out and see them lose 40-0 every single week. I would actually be curious to see what the offense looks like this year with Tyrod running around for a couple weeks. I think we'll get that at some point. It'll be interesting. They have some tough games the rest of the way. So kind of half watching Tankathon and half seeing what some of these young pieces look like will be interesting because, you only get 17 games of these a year. So you're going to watch them. I'm going to watch them at least because what else? I got to do that. The Rex Ryan stuff, which is picking up steam. And, Connor has been joking about this for a while. And it's crazy enough that it's not completely out of the realm of possibility. One, Rex wants the job, right? He's aggressively lobbying for it. I don't think he's being shy about it. And there's something really admirable about that as a Jet fan. And I think that's why certain Jet fans are like, you know what? Let's do it. Let's bring him back. And I don't have a lot of the old archives from TOJ out there. They get lost to the ether of the internet. But I was very hard on Rex at the end, 2013, 2014 in particular. He should have went with Tannenbaum in 2012. That kind of started this whole thing. As the time has passed, I've come to appreciate his tenure more, just because you see how hard it is to win here. And there was something, especially as being a younger Jet fan as I was at the time, having a guy with that level of swagger and bravado and a guy who was proud to work for the Jets and proud of the Jets organization. And all that stuff all sounds corny and cheesy, but it's true. And I get why fans gravitate towards it. Now, I want to be clear. I do not think it's smart to hire Rex Ryan as the next head coach. I think it's like a silly dopamine hit marketing type move. And you only do it if it's been determined that you are stuck with Aaron Rodgers next year. He's coming back no matter what. And even then, I don't even recommend the move. Like, they should not hire Rex Ryan as their next head coach. It's just crazy. There's too many new, young, up-and-coming coaches with new ideas. This dude hasn't coached in like forever for a reason. It's still an entertaining story. And if we could get him on the pod, I'd love to like hear him like make the case and talk to him and ask him questions and get nostalgic. I'm always open-minded about this stuff. And there's not a 0% chance of it happening. Now, there's probably like a 5 to 10% chance of it happening, but the fact that there's any percent chance is kind of crazy. But the Jets are kind of a crazy organization, so you never say never. More pragmatically, you know, you're going to comb through all the names that everyone's passing around the GM list and the head coach list. We've stated our case. I like Vrabel. I like what we've talked about with Pete Carroll getting involved at a more senior level. I don't think Stefanski is going to shake free, but if he did, I would be very excited about that. I don't think Ben Johnson's going to happen. I don't think Munkin's going to happen. So then are you talking about Aaron Glenn? Are you talking about Minter is becoming a more popular name? And I know a lot of the guys on our site are a big fan of him. You're going to look to the front office characters from the Chiefs and the Lions, and let's see what happens, right? It's so early that it's, you know, Douglas wasn't a name a ton of people were talking about. McCagnon wasn't a name a ton of people were talking about. No one was talking about Idzik because he was like a fourth-tier candidate, and that was all they could get. And Tannenbaum kind of came up through the Jets organization under Bradway. The Jets, they cannot promote anyone from within. It has to be part of the change that they make. You just got to go clean break and staff up and do some goddamn forward-thinking things and act like it's the 21st century. Like, come on. That's all I really hope for. And the Rex stuff is like, it's a fun thing to like talk about, kind of like the Curtis Martin stuff a little bit too. And that, in some ways, the Martin stuff, if his role is framed properly, is almost more sensible because it's like a business optics PR marketing role. It's less close to football. Like Rex being your head coach is kind of wild, but wilder things have happened. Now, before I close, like the Jets, it's game week now, right? Jets, Seattle, Geno coming back. Seahawks have been, scrappy this year. They're in the mix. They're much better than the Jets, like many teams. And it's going to be one of these home games where is anybody going to be there? I've continued to get, this has been, a very interesting week, not just in Douglas getting fired, but an interesting week for the site, I'll say, because when these things happen, it's just like so chaotic, not in a bad way. I love it. It's when the community is at its best, the Discord's at its best, the Twitter's at its best, Patreon's at its best, and like 6 podcasts over the course of like 18 hours about what happened, and the response around a lot of the content and the overall like everything we're doing here has been very humbling and flattering and like fun to follow. It means a lot to us, but I'm trying to like wrap my head around like how you handle these remaining games. And a lot of the questions we got, where I was going with the point, is like people are like often, why don't you use your platform to organize a boycott of Jet games or pressure ownership to sell? And I get the anger and the frustration as a fan. I don't have season tickets. I used to have season tickets. I gave them up a long time ago. I don't necessarily buy a ton of team merchandise. We have our own merchandise, which is cool. I'll buy Badlands gear if you don't want to buy Jets gear. So bias opinion aside, I say this like I don't like to tell people how to be fans generally is my sort of stance. And I understand some people do. I don't. Everyone roots in their own way. If people want to root for a tank, go crazy, root for a tank. If you want to root for a win every week, root for a win every week. I'm not going to hammer you in either direction. It's fandom. You handle it your own way. For me, like, ownership does not make anywhere near a majority of their money from ticket purchases and in-stadium purchases, right? It's revenue sharing on media deals, and it's many other things that the Johnsons are making money from. So, 20,000 less people like going to a game is not going to move the needle financially in any way. Yeah, it's embarrassing, but I feel like the stadium turnout's already like tough. Like, you can see the prices on Ticketmaster, you see the opposing fans, and if you don't want to go to games, I get it. If you want to go to games and like tailgate with your friends and family and have fun and like go see a cheap football game, I also get it too. I'm not going to be like, you're an idiot for going and you're like part of the problem. Like, that, you're not part of the problem. It's not your problem. You're a fan. You want to go chill and enjoy a football game and watch Brees Hall score some touchdowns. I'm not mad at you for that. Again, it's not going to convince the Johnsons to sell or not sell. I don't think they're ever going to sell, candidly. I could be wrong. Maybe they will. I mean, the Snyders sold at some point. These things eventually end. They're making a lot of money, and it's a business, and they treat it like a business, often for worse more than better. Although I will give them credit that they have spent money on the team. And one thing that does come through is like there does seem to be a desire to win. Like, we are internet influencers in ourselves. I don't think they're following Badlands because we've disagreed with a ton of stuff that they've done. But obviously you don't want to be reading people's opinions on the internet too much and have that influencing your decisions. You just want to hire smart football people who could be objective and make decisions and build the right way, quote unquote, whatever that is. So you're not going to see like any like boycotts organized by Badlands. This is not like who we are. We're going to sit here and we're going to try to offer sensible, logical plans about how to get this team better. We're going to have some nostalgia. We're going to point out what's going wrong and why we think it's wrong. Be critical when we feel we should be, which is a lot of the time, and not be critical when we don't think we need to. So I hope for the people who go to the Seattle game and go to the other games, you find a way to have an enjoyable experience. I won't be going to any games the rest of the year, but I hope by next year there's some enjoyable games to go to. I'll close this year and just go to the Bills game, which was brutal to watch in person on Monday night. And the leaks that are going to come these next 8 to 9 weeks are going to be fascinating. When a season like this is like over this early and there's big changes coming, Florham Park's going to be leaking like crazy. And this has been an issue for the Jets. People get mad at like the media, like they're making stuff up like the Jets are a leaky building, and they've been a leaky building in every recent regime. So this is not a new thing. But when the ship's going down like this, there'll be more that comes out about Douglas, Saleh, ownership, Rodgers. I'm sure there's some kind of hit piece coming about his presence around the building for fair or unfair. That's just what happens when losing begets these negative things, and you wanted to stop win games. And people are talking about football. If the Jets are, 6-5 right now, we're talking about the wild card race, and we're talking about how important it is they beat Seattle and how they win 2 of their 3 remaining AFC East games. You can't even beat the Colts and the Patriots. Even if they had just won those 2 games, you're relevant. You're 5-6. You're in the mix. They just can't even do that because they can't get a stop on defense, and the quarterback can't throw the ball more than 5 yards down the field, which is the stuff we'll continue to harp on as we get into talking about more games. All right, a longer 12-pack than usual, so I will wrap it. Be back tomorrow. Other guys, flight plan, normal pod from CR and I, War Room, turn on TOJ Talks, Buck the Trend. Content every day going into Jets Seahawks. So thank you everyone for listening. Enjoy your Jetless Sunday, and we will talk to you soon.